This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I will make a motion to open the meeting, noting it is 6:07 p.m. on November 30th, 2020.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let the record show all 5 members of the planning board are present and endorsed opening the meeting. With that said, I'll give our standard announcement of the virtual meeting. Village Hall is currently closed due to the coronavirus pandemic. We are meeting virtually pursuant to orders from Governor Cuomo, and a notice and link to join this meeting is on the village website. So any member of the public is welcome to observe our deliberations tonight and join the online meeting. I see the recording has started. We'll also do our standard conflicts disclosure. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest to disclose?
No.
No.
Okay, great. So last meeting, my video feed didn't work, and I think I fixed that by buying a new Wi-Fi router. So hopefully that'll all work today. I'm in the nether regions of my house, as far as I can get from the Wi-Fi router. So anyway, anyone have any general background things to discuss before we get into things?
So the ATP joint meeting is tomorrow. Is that, I guess that's virtual as well? Where do we go to join in?
That is Wednesday, not tomorrow.
That Wednesday, that's right.
Oh, you're at the second. Okay.
Right, got it. Never mind.
That is going to be virtual as well. They had talked about using the library possibly, but I think there's some resistance on the village board, and also there might have been too many people there for that venue.
Okay.
And it's posted on the village website, the link to join.
Yeah, I had thought about making some comments at the meeting, maybe some on behalf of the board and some on behalf of myself. I have not written up anything so far. I don't know if I'll have time to do so. If anyone else wants to write up something, by all means.
The only other outstanding issue that I had, and I think we discussed this at a meeting, but maybe somebody else recalls, on let's see, West Jefferson. It seemed like that was an area where we didn't have concerns flagged on the map, but there were a few collisions that were recorded in that area. Did Renee end up saying that they were going to change the map on that? That's something they intended to do. I vaguely recall that's what she said. I just didn't want to miss that one. I can follow up with her too if no one recalls.
I know that there was a proposal to put a sidewalk in that went all the way from the village, Four Corners there on Jefferson, all the way to Henrietta Town Line. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one is West Jefferson. Is that the other side, or is it the Sutherland High School
Sutherland,
side?
I was thinking, yeah.
So you're talking about on the entrance to the village there, if you're heading down towards Bushnell's Basin, where people go a gazillion miles an hour?
Right, yeah, going past Sutherland Street.
I don't remember what Renee said about that.
I'll shoot her an email.
There's gap in sidewalks over there as well. I would presume their intention is to fix that. And it'd be awfully nice if we, had a nice sidewalk system so kids could walk to elementary school down there.
Okay, that's all I had. I'll send her an email after this.
Justin, I have one quick question. So you submitted the letter actually in your name, but it came from our board to Bob and Bill in regard to merging the summary into the body of the ATP. And you got a little pushback on that.
Right.
Yeah. Is that going to be worth bringing up?
I personally, so yes, that's correct. It was distributed to all members of the town board, and I believe the village board as well. Linda distributed that for us after the meeting.
Right.
And I did hear that there was some pushback. I didn't hear that that issue was resolved. It doesn't sound like anybody figured out a way to merge those documents. Personally, I don't have anything else to say other than what's in that
What we
email,
said.
so
Mhm.
I was not planning on explaining or making any comment on that.
Okay. So is our letter, is it it's part of our minutes? Did it become part of either boards, the trustees or the town board minutes?
I have not heard. I was hoping that it would be read into the minutes at the joint meeting, but maybe that won't be the case, since it should be publicly recorded. It was sent to the board, so I hope it shows up there.
Okay.
Would we want to resubmit it with that reminder? Maybe, Justin or any of us could forward that document over and say, we'd like to add this to the public minutes and be read into record.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that would hurt.
If anyone wants to speak at the joint meeting and say that we'd really like to see the addendum merged with a regular document so that it would be a easy to use tool and be much easier to read, that sounds like a very reasonable comment to make at their meeting on Wednesday. I have not. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask if they pass it without it being done, in that there's no contextual changes, could they not do it after the fact?
Sure. Yeah. Could they merge the documents afterwards? Certainly.
Okay. So it isn't necessarily the end of the road if they wanted to simply update the formatting of the document at a later time.
I don't think so. Which was one of the reasons that I thought it was okay to say it's consistent with the LWRP and everything in its current form.
Right.
I just think it's disappointing, and I think that as time goes on, the likelihood they'll actually go ahead and merge them together is reduced.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the status of that is at the town. I mean, I read through the contract they had with consultant, and it was very friendly to the town in that it was a fixed bid contract. And you would think any changes that are required in the adoption process are all a fair part of that. So any changes required to get it to pass the environmental review and any changes required to get it past LWRP review seem like part of the contract. I don't think the goal of the contract is to not make a document that could not be adopted. That just doesn't make sense. So I don't know what the status of that contract is, if they closed it out prematurely, if the town did. If so, that would seem to be a pretty big error to tell the consultant that we're done with you and before they had any public hearings and started the technical reviews. But anyway, that's something I'm not aware of. Has anyone heard anything as to whether the consultant has given the document in its original form to the village? We've been requesting it since June.
No, I feel like I would have heard something after all the nagging emails that I sent. Somebody would have told me it came through.
Yeah, I've sent a couple as well, and I emailed the consultant directly, and the consultant responded by saying he has it ready to go, but he has not obtained approval from the town to share it with the village. And that was months ago, so I guess the town declined to share it with the village. So I have no idea why that would be the case. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's outside of our business as well.
Yeah, I was speculating that perhaps even if the contract was charitable to the town, it may still not have a lot of teeth if payment was already rendered, as you mentioned, and depending on the wording of the terms of acceptance for the work. You know, I think quite a bit of time has passed, and so even if they didn't fulfill all the terms of the contract, it seems that enough time might have gone by and payment might have been rendered, and there wouldn't really be any recourse. That would be, you know, it's not like we're going to sue the contract, sue the consultant at this point to give that to us. We might not have too many teeth to actually get what we want there. I do think the town and the village both need to do better about making sure that that we are explicitly granted the access to the sources for all of these documents. We didn't get it for the comprehensive plan, we didn't get it for the village code, and now we don't have it for the ATP, and that's holding us back in all of those cases.
So it basically means we can never edit those documents again.
No, and specifically things like the map sources that I've tried to look for. We don't have the map sources for the zoning map that you tried to update the other day, Justin, and you did a great job of editing it in Photoshop or something, it looks like. But you know, without the vector files, we can't just go in there and drag and drop the boundaries as easily as we should be able to.
Yeah, I opened up the PDF document as a vector file and edited it.
Okay, great.
That was a pretty simple thing. I do have a map of the village at gargantuan size, if you're interested in that I got from the GIS person in the town. So it has details down to where the stop lines are on the roads for next to stop signs and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's very detailed. So it's just gargantuan. So if you try opening it up, you need a lot of memory.
Thank you. Yeah. What I was mostly looking for is the GIS shape files, you know, those specific kinds of vector graphics that allow us to do different layers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll send you I'll track down what file I have and send it to you if you're curious.
Thank you.
It's useful occasionally to
get
some detailed map, some little subsection, and instead of asking the town for it each time, we have a file ourselves, use delete what you don't want and print the rest. That's anyway. Any other thoughts on the HEP?
Has it been publicized at all? Other than just appearing on websites?
Well, not that I know of. I don't know if it's on Facebook or not. I have my personal email address registered with the village that they're supposed to send announcements of meetings and such to, and I don't get announcements very often. I don't recall seeing anything for this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I did put one announcement on a Pittsford community group with 1,500 members, but I haven't seen a whole lot else. I don't know if Bill Smith posted something. I think he may have last week.
I would imagine it's in the town announcement that they send out every week, which goes to quite a few people.
That's good.
I haven't looked at that one yet.
Yep, yeah, Bill Smith did put an announcement out on November 28th.
So the town may have put it out through their traditional channels, but the village may not have. Okay. All right, I want to get into discussing, so there's some general discussion points. A couple things I want to go over tonight that are on the agenda is, first of all, there is discussing any thoughts we may have on 29 South Street, and which is a variance for the new addition that they have. It's on the corner of Maple and South Street. We started talking about that. We just got new drawings today. So I was hoping if anyone had any general thoughts on that, we could go over it. Next item to discuss is our meeting deadlines. So there's meeting dates for 2021. And in particular, a question I was talking about with Linda is, when do we set our application deadlines? We had traditionally set them 5 weeks before the meeting, and people kind of groan about that. And the reason for the long deadline is we needed to send a lot of applications to county planning and publish them in the newspaper, notice of the public hearing. I think publication takes about 3 weeks, and the county planning takes about 4 weeks. So the 5-week deadline was basically to give the building inspector a week to review it and send it to county planning, and then subsequently set up all the announcements for the public hearing. So that takes a while. Think about it. Let me go through the other things we have to potentially discuss tonight and get back to that. Other things to discuss are draft minutes, which didn't get sent around. So we could do two things with those. Either we can review them and edit them as a group, or we can defer those to our next meeting. Any thoughts on that? Each set of minutes is about 5 pages.
Let's review it individually. Get them sent around. I just think going over things as a group, they're going to be what, 10 or 15 pages to go over. I think we can be more efficient, if we all have a look and come up with our edits, if there are any.
Okay.
What's anybody else think?
Good by me.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when we're going to adopt them. The only way to adopt them tonight would be to go over them. And if it's not pressing and we want to get them done in 2 weeks at our next meeting, that's fine with me. And then we also had the resolutions passed around today from Dave Marshall on our resolutions on the approval of those subdivision reviews for Bob Michaels. So that's another thing to discuss. So those are 4 items. So it sounds like minutes are off our agenda. If I want to jump into the quick one, meeting deadlines. Does anyone have any thoughts as to what our application deadlines should be for meetings?
Having it a couple days to 2 or 3 after our meeting, as long as it gives Steve enough time to review it, probably okay, but it doesn't seem like we have enough wiggle room. And I would hate to have it be longer than what it is now. So if anything, we give up a day or 2, but that's only if Steve's willing to accept a slightly shorter time period. That's the only thing I can see.
Yeah, I'm thinking what makes sense is maybe figure out what the deadline is for publication of a public hearing and setting the application deadline to like a week before that. So we typically need 3 weeks to publish, then make our deadline 4 weeks. So Steve has a week to review it and decide if it's ready to be published. And if so, then that can happen. So I asked earlier what that deadline is, and Linda didn't know off the top of her head, but I'm thinking it takes approximately 3 weeks to get things in the newspaper.
If we don't, so one of the risks of being too close to the 4-week or whatever the time period is we may miss a publication deadline, right? And so if we can have it be a little bit more time, the better, right? To making sure we get everything published. So I don't know. I don't know if 4 weeks is plenty of time for that or not, but I just want to be careful that we don't cut it so short that we run the risk of not getting something published and then have to go back to the applicant and say, sorry, come back in an extra month.
Okay, well, let's look for guidance from Linda and Steve on that then, but basically we'll go by the publication deadline and tack on approximately a week for Steve to review it or whatever he feels is reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be for him to review and then get it to, I think Dorothea does it for the publication.
I think Linda sends them in.
Okay, how long does it take Linda to effectively get Steve's, hey, we're good to go, for her to then get it to the newspaper in time? Is that same day type of thing?
I think it depends on the application and how big it is and what Steve is doing.
Okay.
So I believe the publishing deadlines, so first of all, it needs to be in the newspaper 10 days before our meeting. And then we need to send something to the newspapers a week before that. So I believe the deadline is effectively the Wednesday, 17 days before our meeting. So that's the deadline.
Got it. All right, so maybe a week's enough. Like you said, I would just defer to Linda and Steve and ask how much time they need.
Mhm.
It'd be awfully nice if we could find a newspaper that was faster to publish. I hear that's expensive to publish it in other newspapers. So anyway, all right, so we'll leave it at that then. I think Linda said she sent around meeting dates for next year. And did anyone have any thoughts on any of that?
No.
I guess she didn't send around the dates. She just asked about the deadlines.
Right.
If she sticks to the Monday night like done, I don't see any reason for that to be a challenge for me.
No, Monday nights.
And we'll stick to 6:30.
Planning board night.
We'll stick to a 6 o'clock workshop and 6:30 meeting. Is that still okay with everybody?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well then. All right. So next topic is let's talk about the South Street application.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at the new drawings yet. I took a brief look at them.
Yeah, I did.
And so I had a specific thing I wanted to inquire about with everybody. So we had discussed last week at our last meeting, we got introduction to this, and then it turned out that they're going to need some other variances and more things need to be looked at. So where we left it off was we asked for updated drawings that would show how much impervious surface there is, and then they would submit an application for a second variance for exceeding the minimum amount of impervious surface or maximum amount of impervious surface. And then they're going to go over drainage with Steve. And I see that they had in their new application, they had put in a French drain for drainage. And I had an email from Steve today. I wasn't sure if it was exactly clear, but Justin Lakegood sent out a request earlier asking Steve if he had any opinions on the drainage. And I guess he said he went over there and he's going to take a little more look at it, but so far he doesn't have any concerns, it sounded like.
Right. Yeah, I did send an email to him and also to Zach Bleer, the DPW superintendent, just to see if they had known issues of water pooling in the street there. I know there's a crosswalk that's commonly used there, and didn't want to turn it into a skating rink with the addition of new property that's going to drain into that area. And Steve did mention that he was going to go down there, especially since today was raining all day. It was a good day to look at that. And he said he didn't see any issues. It seemed like there are a couple of storm drains down there, and they seem to be clearing the water adequately. I also walked our dog down there in the middle of the rain, and I didn't really see any pooling either. So the drainage seems all right in that area. It doesn't seem to be an existing concern.
Okay, good. That's a good update. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Susan.
So I took a look at the drawings, and it seems like the addition is going to be taller than the house. And so somehow that thing got really big, between my understanding and, looking at the first drawing. So I don't know what anybody else thinks, but it's going to be, variance, which is okay. And I do have a concern, and I'm not even sure if it's our purview. how the view shed is blocked from the houses on Maple Street across the street from that addition. So now they're looking at, the house and then the first, an older addition. And now this new one is going to block off a pretty charming view, through backyards and different roof lines. And so anyway, I think they're just cursed by being on a corner, because adding to the back of a house is kind of like the way that, village houses, add any kind of space. But I really, if it remains that tall, higher, like I said, higher than the roof of the house, I think that's, kind of a visual, I don't know, disaster for the front porches of the houses on across the street on Maple Street. But like I said, I'm not even sure I get to weigh in on that.
Well, I think one of the criteria we got to look at is community character. And so when I looked at the drawings, it looks like it's intended to be about the same height as that addition. I don't know if in the drawing the perspective is skewed or something like that, but it looked like from the side view it's supposed to be the same height. But then if you look at from the east end view, it appears taller.
Right.
And I don't know what to make of that.
You're also, there's a hill in the back. I pulled up the screen here too. So if you're trying to get the same amount of interior, the same height, ceilings and everything, you're necessarily going to be going a little bit higher with the roof, right?
Yeah.
And this is the view you'd be blocking right here as well. And
Justin, that's a great photo, because now, for the houses across the street, with their front porches, this is what they get to look at now, and that's like 3 and 4 houses, up the street. And that, I think that has its charm, certainly more charm, than looking at, the side of a blocky structure. But
if I may add, Susan, to this, I am also equally concerned about the view shed, but I'm also concerned about the lot coverage and the size of the house relative to that particular community neighborhood. In looking through on square footage of houses, the average square foot of house in that area is between probably 1,400 and 1,700. And there's only one that is over 2,000. And it's 2,200 on a very large lot up north on South. So actually what would be, north on South Street. And so my concern would be visual character, lot coverage. And while it may be that the size of the house is not abnormal for the village, it's, in my view, abnormal for that neighborhood. And while we might be able to address water and we might be able to address, variance after variance to get it done, I'm particularly concerned about lot coverage and the size of a house like that on a very small lot, what that implies for the rest of the community. And it's a concern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I had originally looked at this, and the original drawings we saw had no size listed on it. And I had thought this is a very traditional application for a simple variance for things that we normally approve. But listening to what you say, and this addition is much larger than what I had originally thought it was. This is what, in terms of footage, it's something like 700 to 800 feet of it's adding to the house. If they had it, well, 2 floors, it looks like there's not well 2 floors, but it's the size of a house, 800 feet larger. So it looks like their house is going to be somewhere in the order of 2,400 square feet.
Yes. And what they're showing on the drawing here, the 1357, I believe that's just for the first floor. And so that would be page 3, has the square footage and the lot coverage. And they, of course, when doing lot coverage, they're just doing the footprint. They're not doing the second floor square footage. And so the footprint of the house and the porch is 1357. Well, that's just 100. I mean, honestly, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 houses within 5 or 6 houses of them that are smaller than that, not even including the second floor. And so there's only one house, 2 houses of, and I jotted down, it looks like 20 of them in just south in Maple. And only one was over 2,000. It was 2256, and it was 4 houses north on the corner of South and
Wood.
Yes, Locust.
Oh, Locust.
Yeah, the one on the corner of South and Locust.
Mr. Lakegibb, can you give me permission to share my screen?
Sure thing.
I did some of this. It sounds like I did the same look at things that Dave did. And I had put everything into a spreadsheet for some of the neighboring houses. And I just wanted to show people a draft of that and see what people thought.
Sure. Can you do it now?
Yeah, I'm trying to find applications. This one. Okay.
Oh, great.
So, Dave, please chime in with what your observations were. But first of all, this is what I had listed, and I went to a variety of sources. I mostly looked at Zillow, and that tends to give the lot square feet and the house size. I'm not sure it's accurate, but at least it's a good starting point. And their house is already 1,600 square feet per this. So if they're adding on another 700, 800, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,400. And if you look at Maple Street, which is the primary one that we're looking at, here's several on Maple. These ones on Maple are not that big. There's 1,700 square foot one, otherwise 1,400, 1,500 square feet is pretty typical. The other side in Maple, they're even smaller, 1,000, 1,200. Again, 1,700 square feet appears to be the largest one on Maple Street right now. So they already have, it looks like effectively the second largest house on Maple Street. So these ones in orange are the neighboring properties. And one thing I noticed is most of the properties have a detached garage, and this one at 29 South does not have any form of a garage. So in terms of the total building size on the lot, if you were to add the garage to the size of the house, that may be a consideration.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I have all the ones on here, but there's a couple that are bigger. This one, 8 Rand, I believe is right at the corner of Rand and Maple. That's a big one. Some of these ones in green are fairly big. This one on 2 Rand. And again, I'm looking at the lot size. These are all tiny lots. Fairly large houses on tiny lots. The only one I found that, to me, that looked kind of somewhat comparable is on the corner of Rand and, is it Locust? It's right over there by the church. So this is a corner lot with a 2,400 square foot house, and this lot is 7,400 square feet as opposed to 6,000 square feet. So it's a slightly larger lot, but it's a large house on a small lot. So that's just down the road from St. Louis Church, whatever the end of Rand Street is.
Yeah, Locust.
And that is a long, looks like a long blue house.
Yeah, it's a duplex, I think. Right.
First of all, can everyone, I don't know if people can see this. I can make it bigger if you want.
Nope, I got it.
I can see it fine. So
I'm okay.
the fourth column, is that the percentage, decimal representing the percentage
This
of
is
lot coverage?
house size divided by the lot size,
Okay, but not including any accessory structures.
not including any accessory structures.
Gotcha, and driveways.
So, so if anyone has any thoughts, I have a thought as to how we can, two thoughts on how to move forward with this. Three thoughts. And if anyone wants to chime in first, go ahead. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So first of all, what I've heard is concerns about the visual impact of this and basically the bulk of the building. And my thought is we're not the experts on that, but we have others that are, which is the HPB.
Right.
One thing I was thinking of, I think is a real good idea, so that we don't possibly come up with conflicting opinions with the HPB, is we do a referral to the HPB and ask them for commentary on the building bulk, mass, and scale and compatibility with community character. And I think they have a meeting in just over a week, so they get a chance to discuss it before our next regular meeting.
I think that's great.
I do too.
Yep.
Okay, so that's one thought. Another two thoughts I had is, I'm not going to say whether or not we're going to approve this or not, but two things to consider is possibly some conditions if we decide to approve it. One, it could possibly be that they're not allowed to build a garage, or they're not allowed to build a garage more than one story or one car. If we're trying to take a look at an analysis of, we see it somewhat compatible with other buildings due to the nature that they have a garage. Just about all these other houses, however, with a detached garage, it's behind the house. So per what Susan suggested, is that part of their curse is that they're on a corner lot and we have full view of the side of the house. So if it was a typical front view lot, no one would probably care if they add on to the back. So I don't know if that alone is a relevant thing to consider. I'm just throwing it out there. And another thing to think about is maybe we can cure some of the ills by requiring them to plant a tree or two.
Just a comment about building depth on a house on a small lot. While many people may not care if it wasn't a corner lot, I still think that the immediate neighbors would. And if in thinking about the left and the right of a community, of a neighbor, of somebody building, backward, you would take away that view shed of those neighbors in a meaningful way, and do so specifically contrary to the lot coverage requirements that are embedded in the village code. So to that end, there is a risk to the neighboring community, even though in this case it's only one neighbor, not two on the other side as well. But I still think that matters.
Yeah,
I really wish the other neighbors would chime in here, but we haven't heard from them.
Correct.
The number that is in the most recent plan that was submitted from the architect does seem substantial to me. I mean, I know we've got to look more into that, but we're talking about 37.5% of the lot being covered, where the maximum is only 25% in that zone. And I did, Steve did mention to me that, well, they've already got, what was the number here? He said that,
I think they're at 31% or something like that. Is that what they said?
yeah, I think so. I can't find the number right now, but he said he was coming up from 31%. But that in itself isn't a reason that they should be given more of an exception. You know, if they're coming from 31%, you could also say, well, that's enough. You know, they're already getting an exception. And I think you know, we could go back to the substandard lot and say, well, they've got a substandard lot, but just because you have a small lot doesn't mean that you're entitled to build whatever you want to on it. You know, that's why people pay more for larger lots. So I think it would be good to get the HPB's view on this, but you know, based on the numbers, it does seem like it's a substantial ask to me to be going to this amount of coverage.
Right, right.
To add to that, I just did the math. They are at 30.67 currently for lot coverage, which of the list of properties Justin's placed here, it is the third largest lot coverage, second only to a fairly sizable one there on 2 Rand that we had referenced, which is a duplex. And then the, well, at least Justin, like you mentioned, you thought it was a duplex. And then there's that other one a little lower down at 0.3, and it's up a little bit. But there's only 2. So they're already the third largest lot coverage.
Now, just so you know, if you look at other places in the village, there are other crazy ones. But it depends what we're looking at. Are we looking for a precedent for this elsewhere in the village, or are we looking at the neighborhood? And I would say the immediate neighborhood is the biggest concern. If you were to take a look at some of the houses on Wood Street, those are some of the smallest lots in the village. There's also some really small lots in Washington. So these are lots that are literally almost half the size of this lot. This lot's already tiny. So going down to 6,000, this one's 3,500. This one is half the size on Line Street at 3,000. And, you know, they have, would normally be a fairly modest size house, but if you're to do that ratio of house size and lot size, these are pretty astronomical here because of that. And if we were to take a look at some of the buildings on Main Street, I mean, there are some old houses, like you take a look at the area next to where Holiday Hot sets up over there. Those lots over there are old houses on Main Street, and they're fairly large buildings that take up most of the lot, and then almost the entire rest of the lot is paved. And, you know, again, I don't know what the lot coverage is there, how that came to be, but per some of the comments I heard earlier, is part of the reason for the lot coverage is so you can look out at another residential property and see lawn and landscaping and not just parked cars and pavement, and so on. So, I mean, I think that makes sense to hear about some of the neighbors. But I just want to throw that out, that there are other tiny lots there. So if you're purely looking at that ratio, there are some other properties that are probably worse, but not so many in this particular neighborhood.
But what are the, I guess that would have to be in terms of the zoning in the other areas. What's the maximum coverage where those other small lots are found? And I'm trying to look for that right now, but.
I think we only have 2 districts, so it's probably the same. I see Susan wanted to talk. You want to chime in?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think this is, you know, kind of this is a neighborhood issue. You know, even the houses on North Main, you know, there are mature trees. You're talking, I guess, past the dairy, right? Or where are you talking about the houses, Justin?
I'm thinking right near Four Corners. So where the hot dog cart is.
Oh, there. Yeah, but you know that a couple of those are they're not even residential.
They're commercial, but it's a residential look to the district. It's not residential use. So the intent of it was to keep it looking like old houses, but allow offices to go there.
Right, but it's not. So the point is, it's not. No one lives there, you know, to look at a parking lot, and that's very different from the situation on, you know, the corner of Maple and South. That is a solidly, you know, residential neighborhood. And, you know, we don't want to be like, you know, San Francisco, you know, where, you know, houses are built out, you know, or like Queens or, you know, Malibu, you know, fabulous houses that you can, you know, touch, you know, with your hand going out the window. What defines the village is this older model with lawns and, you know, gardens, and I think that is defining for us. So anyway, I don't even know if I made a point, but
I think
Okay, well, I mean, I think this is a very good discussion. Thank you. Any other thoughts? We haven't heard from you, Joanne.
The hedge that is in the picture is probably twice that height at this point from the pictures that were in the plan, the original plan. And the next property over has a garage, so your view is already impeded from Maple Street, from the porches on Maple Street.
They also have a playground there at the moment that's been added since the Google Street View.
I agree with Susan. I like the openness part of our village and the lawns. But for this property, there really isn't much to see from Maple Street, I don't think. From that picture. I haven't gone over and really looked at it yet.
Well, this is something I see that we could probably argue either way. We could argue that this is a problem and deny it, or we can argue that they've mitigated impacts as best as possible, or maybe put some conditions on there if we wanted to help them mitigate the impacts. So I think this is something we'll each have to search and figure out what we want to do. And that's okay. We may not have a unanimous opinion, and that's okay too. But it seems like there's plenty of concern, and it also seems that people aren't really sure what they want to do right now. So I think this idea of forwarding it to the HPB and seeing what their thoughts are is an excellent one. It seems like everyone agrees to that. So what would you like the HPB to weigh in on? It sounds like building mass and scale.
Yeah.
so. We have
Yes, compatibility with community character.
view shed.
So view shed impacts on the community. Or neighboring properties. I mean, to go with what some people said is, you said we don't want this to be like San Francisco, where one house you can reach out the window and touch another house, and you want some open space in the yard. And you know, this applicant basically they have two choices. If they need more room, they either buy a different house, or they go through us and the HPB and they get permission to put on this large addition.
Yeah.
So, and that's not our decision to make. They have an application into us, but it's not like we can tell them, oh, you really should be buying a different house.
Right. I mean, in my mind, I think about lot coverage and I think, okay, what are the extenuating circumstances by which we would extend beyond the 25% that's per code? What is it that would lead us to believe that this is something that is appropriate for us to grant, right? In my mind, I'm thinking it backs up against a warehouse building, right? There's no view shed. They can build it deeper back. It's not, maybe it's tucked in a canal side lot where you have open space to the left and the tightness to the roads or the corner or the view shed isn't as critical, right? It isn't because we want a bigger house on a smaller lot, to me. I feel like that's opens us up for anybody coming forward and saying, could you grant us the approval to build beyond the 25% requirement that's embedded in code? Well, sure. Everybody could build backwards in that neighborhood. That entire neighborhood could build backwards and answer the question of how does it take away from the driving, walking view shed? And I'm just really concerned that we're not sticking to the code the way I think it was written and what we're tasked to do personally.
I have a
Sorry.
question. So if they did a 1-story, it would make it less than 400 square feet. Is that right?
The floor, no, the floor print or the footprint of that addition is 419 square feet. If they made it 1-story, it's still 419, but it wouldn't be 840 added to the square footage of the house. So the house, instead of being maybe 2,200 or 2,400, would be 200 or 400 less. So that again, they're not referencing what the new square footage of the house is. They made us calculate that. And so I think the way this is designed, it's a living room with a loft. So it isn't really a full 840 new square feet. It might be the 400 on the ground plus some area at the top. And so it takes the 1,626 square foot it is now and probably turns it more like 2,200 or so. That's my guess.
Yeah, going from Dave's point, I did have the same concern as well, that if you do this, what's the justification for saying to anybody else on the street, no, you can't extend? And in that sense, I think we've talked about this before, but we're not allowed to legislate. And so if we're saying that we give this person an exception, then why is that not just rezoned instead to allow for greater coverage?
Well, the zoning is what it is because they had to come up with some numbers, and this was talked about, is that minimum lot sizes and stuff like that are not possible to really legislate so they make sense for every property. And so our job is to look at the outliers. And the precedent here is this is a substandard lot that doesn't meet the minimum size requirements. And on one side, we need to look out for community character, but on the other side, we didn't create these. These are created long before our zoning code was adopted. And these people need to be able to use their property in a reasonable fashion and update it reasonably. The question is this reasonable? And that's the debate. And there's certainly good arguments either way. But ultimately, our task is to look at the benefit to the applicant and the impacts on the community. And we're being asked to look at that ratio. And if there's no impact on the community, then that's something other than setting a precedent that we might often grant those. In this case, it looks like there is an impact on the community and there is a benefit to the applicant. So I think this is something that just requires careful thinking as to what we each want to do. So I appreciate those sentiments as to when is this reasonable and is this setting a precedent? And effectively, it would be setting possibly a precedent for all small properties. And I've long thought about this from time to time. It's like if someone wants a variance for a wider driveway, we didn't set the driveway width requirements in code. When should we allow someone to just put in a wider driveway? If there's nothing particular to the property, doesn't make sense. In this case, the one thing particular to the property is it's a substandard lot. But
to that end, we didn't cause it to be a substandard lot, nor did it become one after the fact, after their purchase. So they're aware of it being a substandard lot at the time of purchase. You're aware of the size. I mean, you should be aware of the building codes or the square foot requirements and the fact that you might have a challenge expanding in a substandard lot.
Well, I think that's a valid opinion that one could have. It's one thing is to look at is this a self-created hardship? And absolutely it is. If you're buying a house on a tiny lot and you want to increase its size by 50%, maybe you should have bought a larger house to begin with. But we don't know what life-changing circumstances they had. Maybe they all of a sudden got quadruplets. I mean, it's not something you can plan for, but you may need a house to accommodate it, and a larger house would be a little pricey. So, we don't know what their circumstances are that led to this decision.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, this is speculating, but clearly there's not a lot of houses in the village that go up for sale. And, you know, if somebody's here already and wants to stay, it can be hard to expand your size, you know, and just find another house to replace that one in the village. It's really hard to buy houses here, which is a really good thing for our homeowners. And to that end, I mean, we just have to be considerate. I recognize that.
I think along the same lines, though, when a lot of people talk about finding space in the village, they talk about aging in place and actually finding smaller spaces too. And as we allow these kinds of changes, the housing value increases, and you're not catering to some of the lower end market that is actually in high demand.
Yep, I agree. Yep. And what is the term that they often say, the variability of housing stock or something like that? Housing.
Yeah, diversity of housing stock, something like that.
Diversity of housing.
There's just one other picture. I found really briefly. Joanne was mentioning that the shrubs have grown up, and you can see here, if you go from I found a 2007 picture, and there's almost no shrubbery there, and now they've got a larger shrub, and they've also grown a playground over in this area. But I think that, you know, this shows you're looking at about that much time if you did cut it down, and you know, that view comes and goes over the course of you know, 10 or 15 years, but the building won't. You know, that's we're committing ourselves to a certain view shed at that point.
And just a quick comment too, the drawing that they did, I don't quite know if it's to scale. And the reason I say that is because you look at the back and you look at the size of the addition, okay? The size of the addition would only leave about 5 feet between what the driveway is and the back of the proposed addition. It'd be a very narrow sliver of grass, and it'd basically take up the entirety of that backyard, right?
And you've got the retaining wall there too.
Yeah, I think it almost feels like the gap between, I'm looking at the third drawing. Visually, it looks like there's a fair amount of space between the back wall and the side of the driveway. I'll go one lower.
1, 2, 3.
That one. That gap looks pretty wide, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that wide.
Right. I'm just
So they're showing, so that gap there, they're showing it about 14 feet wide. So if you go to the next picture, Justin, you see the width there, the bump out section of the addition, the 14 feet. And then you go back up one picture, they're showing the width to the driveway to be about the same as the width of that window pane area. It is not at all. It would be, so it's 20 feet wide. The addition in our east to west view right now is 19.6 feet. That addition at the top horizontal row, 19.6. And the space behind the, go up if you could 2 pictures. Yeah, right there, and look at the vertical line on the right, on the top. It's 30 feet from the lot line to the top edge of the end of the proposed addition. So 20 feet of that is the width of the addition. That means they only have 10 feet from the lot line to the start of that addition. And in that 10 feet, they have a car and a cistern drain.
Right, a French right.
French drain.
Yeah.
And they're showing it when you go back two pages lower. You look at the space that they're showing there, and they're showing it visually like you have 30 feet plus, but you don't. Well, actually, let me back up. Am I doing this wrong? No, I'm doing it wrong. My apology. I'm doing this wrong. The 30 feet, the 30 feet does appear to be 30 feet, but it visually just, it seems like it's taking up a lot more of that backyard space than the way it's drawn here, compared to, go back to the picture, the live picture of the backyard.
Is that down further? Oh, you
No.
mean the, right, on Street
Yeah.
View, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I took a look at the distance between the driveway and the building in the GIS software, and it looks like it's 30 feet. So if they have a 20-foot addition, then that's going to leave 10 feet of yard.
So it does leave 10 feet of yard.
What is the length of it? Was it 20 feet or 22 feet?
19.6.
Okay. So that from the edge of the driveway to the house is approximately 30 feet. That's probably accurate to within a foot or two. So they're going to have approximately a 10-foot yard left over. And the drainage is going in there, and it's uphill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where would you say then the back end of that would be? Like right at the top of sort of the middle of that garage in the back?
Let me take a look here. It would be roughly in line with the front of that shed.
Front of the shed.
Yeah,
So that shed is about where the front door of that shed is roughly in line with the back wall of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so then where is that space going? So, okay, so here's the challenge. Like I'm looking at that green space right now and I'm thinking that's about, it's not 20 feet, maybe it's 23, 24 feet. Is the driveway, the way they have it drawn, okay, so it's a 2-car wide driveway. That driveway right now is more than 10 feet wide, right? I mean, how wide is that driveway?
I will tell you. Approximately 17 feet.
17 feet. So they're saying there's 13 feet of grass. All right, then how wide is that grass spot there? Can you show it from the one
The
edge of the
grass
grass?
spot is 30 feet wide from the driveway to the house.
Okay, so there is 10 feet left somehow in there. Wow. So it would become an incredibly tiny strip of lot, but.
And as far as the view shed goes, I guess you're just obscuring all of the buildings down the street there, so you're just going to see the
Right.
tree line there.
Yeah, you lose all depth of field.
Right. And Joanne, I realize there's a little garage there, but you do look like four houses down. So it kind of, gives you kind of, an expanse. But, maybe this is a HPB.
Yeah, I'd really like to see what they have to say about it. They may solve our problems for us.
Mhm.
Right.
I think this is a good discussion, and I think this is a real good cause for concern. So the other thing I'll encourage people to think about is there any, if you were to approve this, is there any other physical changes to their property that you feel would help mitigate this? And literally, we can ask for whatever we want, I think, just about. You could ask them to get rid of their driveway. You could ask them to get rid of their patio. You could ask them to get rid of the shed. You could ask for changes to the building dimensions to make it, we have options. So I'm just asking you to think about that. Would any of that change your opinion?
Brief comment on that. The lot coverage includes the driveway and the shed, and that's 600 feet of coverage. So if we come back and we say we are concerned about the lot coverage, and they come back with proposed solutions for the lot coverage, well, I would personally leave it up to them to say what they want to get rid of in order to address the lot coverage. I don't want to suggest what we find preference with. I don't have any preference with anything other than lot coverage.
I would like to, it snows, so how can you be building this big addition and not, you're snowed in some days. Like, I would not want them to say, oh, it's only 10 more feet. And, then we can put a garage in, where the driveway and the shed is. So,
Yeah.
maybe we should think about, a limitation to future future expansions.
I think that would make sense. I would be very amenable to saying either no garage or only a one-car garage. And that's if we were to approve it. I don't want to go down the road of us saying what we're going to do tonight. It's just go over what our thoughts are. There's big concerns here. I agree with everyone. It's been good discussion. We'll have to come up with what our individual thoughts are as to whether to say yay or nay to this.
How do we, so let's just, flip for a side for a minute, to the applicant's, point of view. They want something bigger. Obviously, they want to add, how about if it weren't 2 stories, or if they could do something, a little, modest compared to this addition that is almost as big as the footprint of the original house. So think from the, the homeowners, point of view. We want to stay in Pittsford. Will that add to our, to the value of the house? Yes, to have something, bigger. I don't want it to just be, not consider their home ownership and, and their right to, propose something.
Yeah, well, we need to think of the ratio. The thing is the benefit to the applicant and the impact on the community. It's certainly fair game for us to ask the applicant, how will this benefit you and what situations are you in? I would normally err on the side of that's not necessarily our business. I don't really care how many kids they have. That's not necessarily our business. They have a rationale for wanting a larger house. We could ask them about that, or we could not. That's not normally something I would think of, but if that helps anybody.
I prefer not as well, but
Okay,
I think it's, I think we just have to think about neighborhood character. What are the reasons why we would extend beyond traditional lot coverage? Where are they already? What did they know when they purchased the house? And independent from the conditions that fall upon them, that doesn't necessitate, or there's a word for that. It doesn't suggest that, there is a benefit to them, but what is the value of the historic character or the sizing and scaling of the community? And is that a necessary fabric of our village? And there's value to that. And how do we make sure we maintain that? And I would say that value would exceed potentially the relative value gained to the applicant. So is the harm greater than the good, or and so I don't know. And so your idea of a 1-story, what does that look like? I don't know. Maybe it certainly helps the community. Maybe it reduces the footprint. Maybe we, even with something like that, we go with the idea of only having a smaller scale garage or shed structure.
Okay, well, I think we've gone over a lot of good thoughts. Everyone has things to chew on. And let me just go over what we're going to say in our referral to the HPB, because I think their feedback will be invaluable to us, because really the big concern here is the size of this building. And that's really their purview and their expertise as to weighing in as to whether that's compatible with village character. So I hope they give us some good feedback on that. Let me try sharing my screen here. Justin, can you try sharing my screen again?
Sure. that better for you?
Okay. Oh, I got a bunch of other windows open. I need to shrink.
You can just open an application too, like you did before, I think.
That's what I did. I opened the application view, but I've just been editing four or five documents in Word. So, I mean, that's literally been my afternoon. So let me just go over this. Let's see if we're in agreement. Because if we refer something to the HPB, it's very helpful if we're specific. So I think this is what we're asking them to review is building bulk mass and scale, I guess proposed.
Mhm.
The compatibility of community character and viewshed impacts on neighboring properties.
Should we, after community character, should it be community/neighborhood character? Like how important is it for them to have that be a regionalized or localized comment versus just a village comment?
I think that's synonymous to me, but if that clarification is good, that's fine by me.
Okay, thanks.
Ask them to provide any suggestions to mitigate impacts. Do you want to mention anything? Landscaping, building, changes to what it looks like. Or just leave it open-ended.
I'd leave it.
And then I think it makes sense to send some of our observations that we've discussed already. The house size is much larger, the proposed house size is much larger than other houses on Maple Street. The lot is small, but typical for Maple Street.
And right, and you know, non-conforming.
Yeah. The small lot is pre-existing,
Mm-hmm.
non-conforming.
Mm-hmm.
This is a corner lot. The full side of the house is visible. They have no garage, but other houses in this neighborhood or in this, whatever you want to call it, have detached garages. And I was suggesting that maybe we just send them that spreadsheet of size comparisons. Any other thoughts on tweaking these points?
Looks good.
Yep, looks good, Justin.
Yeah.
And then we'll be reviewing this again. When is our next meeting? Is it December 16th?
Yes, I think it is.
Or is it the 14th?
No,
Oh,
16.
16th
It's on a
was this one.
Wednesday?
Yeah, 4th. Oh, hang on.
I believe the HPB is meeting on the 14th and we're meeting on the 16th.
Oh, okay.
That's correct, 16th. It's on the village calendar as such.
Is our meeting with Mindy tomorrow or
Tomorrow.
Wednesday?
Yes, tomorrow.
So does that make sense? Basically tell them that we'll be meeting on December 16th and we'd either like their findings or like them to tell us when they'll have findings.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, I will save this. And so what is this? I'll rename it later. All right. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do then. I'd like to stop my screen share first of all, if we're all in agreement with this. So I'll just make a motion to adopt a resolution to refer this to the HPB with the notes as discussed.
Second.
And how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we also have to leave a public hearing open or anything?
Anyone else want to vote? I've only heard two.
I did. Aye.
That I said aye.
Okay, so that's all unanimous then, all five consented to that. Okay. As far as the public hearing goes, we're not actually continuing the public hearing at this meeting, or it's continued at our next meeting. So we can still discuss it in meetings. If the public hearing is still open, we can still discuss it in a workshop session. But so I don't think we need to address the public hearing.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, let's go back to our agenda. I think the last thing to go over is that resolution that Dave Marshall had worked on.
Yeah.
And I have two initial thoughts. One, I hadn't gotten a chance to go over it yet since it came in this afternoon. I was busy between then and our start of our meeting. That's my first thought. And the other thought is I'm not sure I care if it's resolved. That's in an amicable way.
Yeah, I think it was fairly straightforward. The only thing I didn't know some numbers, resolution numbers. And aside from that, there was a few documents that I didn't have available to me to look at and confirm the titles or the dates of, but I assume they're in good order. And other than that, I think it's fairly straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
So you had a chance to look it over, Susan?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
I didn't look at it yet, but I'm sure it's fine.
Okay, well, we already approved the resolution, so I don't know if we necessarily need to vote on anything here tonight. But if everyone agrees it's okay to send out as is, I'll just sign it. We'll insert the resolution numbers and be done with it. Is that everyone have consent to that?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Thanks,
I
Dave.
agree.
Yeah, you
Okay,
bet.
so it sounds like unanimous opinion to accept them, sign them, add the resolution numbers, and be done with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. All right, that's any, I believe that covers our agenda for tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Could I just ask for Justin, outside of you, Justin V, maybe just to briefly talk to people before we talk with Mindy to save a little bit of her time?
Yes.
Oh, make sure you stop the recording.
Yep.
Although we can't, in all honesty, if you want to go into executive session, you could do that and stop the recording, but with no attorney present, you can't go into attorney-client session.
Oh, good to know. Okay, well, we'll have to wait for an attorney.
So there's limited reasons to go into executive session. I believe discussing existing litigation is one possible reason if that's what you're going to discuss.
That was the only thing I was gonna do. Yeah, if that's I was assuming that was an okay reason, so thank you for clarifying.
So my suggestion then is, if that's your intention, it sounds like this is the matter that I've recused myself from, so I will be leaving the meeting. My suggestion would be that you make a motion to enter executive session to discuss existing litigation. Go ahead and do that and then stop the recording.
Thanks,
Okay.
Joe.
Yeah, that's great. Would we end this meeting now then and then do that? Or would we do the executive session and then end our meeting later?
I believe that's the proper process.
We have to come back in and end this meeting, right?
I believe that would be the proper process, correct? You can only enter executive session from a noticed meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So then we record it again when we're done ending the meeting. Okay, that works for me. So I'll make a motion to go into executive session with Justin Vlietstra recusing himself for that session.
And
Second.
again, the rationale is to discuss pending existing litigation, correct?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Second.
And I will abstain and I will exit the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Justin.
Thank you,
Night,
Justin. Later. Okay, I will stop recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Well, shall I make the motion to this one? I'd like to make a motion to end the executive session, the topic of which was existing litigation, and rejoin the regular session.
Second.
Aye.
I think that might have been Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then if there are no other topics from members of the board, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.
Aye.
Night.